Hello everyone, my name is Mario Tiozzo and I'm the Data Analysis and Visualization Librarian here at UNB Libraries. In this course, we'll mainly be using the PISA datasets for our data analysis, which is great, in part because the data has already been cleaned. That is not always the case, however, and you can sometimes be given a dataset that has quote-unquote dirty data in it. This simply means that the data is not consistent or includes errors or omissions. Today, we are going to take a quick look at two ways to clean your data, manipulating letter casings and removing trailing spaces. Here, we have a dataset I created about a fictional student list that we will want to analyze. In it, we see that it has the student ID, email address, home country, and Canadian province if applicable. Let's start with a student ID. It's a simple alphanumeric combination of 4 numbers and 3 letters. The format should be that all the letters are capitalized, but we can see that this is not always the case. Let's try to fix that. It's always a good idea to keep the original data in some fashion, so in this instance, let's try to optimize the original data in a set of columns nearby. So I'll simply copy and paste the titles here for our reference and put them here. Great. To clean up the student ID, we will need to use the upper formula, which puts all the text in a string in uppercase. We do this by going to an empty cell, let's pick H2 here, pressing the equal sign, typing in the name of the formula, in this case upper, opening the parenthesis, then clicking on the first data point of the original data. So in this case, it's an A2. Closing the parenthesis and pressing enter. Great. We can now go back to that cell with the formula. Notice that it has a dark square at the bottom right corner. When my white cross cursor approaches it, it turns into a plus sign. When that happens, I can left click and drag all the way to the bottom of our data set. And all the formulas are picked up. You can see that they're referencing the right coordinates. If I double click on this one, for instance, yep, perfect. Notice now that all our student IDs have been capitalized. Let's clean this up a little bit. You'll notice if I go to the border of the H and I column, my cursor will also change. Then I can just double click on it and my column has now been adjusted to reflect the text in it. Next, let's move to email addresses. In this case, we want all the text to be in lowercase, and we can see instances where that is not the case. We will use the lower formula to help us out with this. We do this by going to an empty cell, pressing the equal sign, typing in the name of the formula, in this case lower, opening the parentheses, clicking on the first data point of the original data, so in this case, it's found in B2, closing the parentheses, pressing enter. We can then go to the bottom right corner of the cell, left clicking and dragging it down again, just like we did. Alternatively, since we have a filled column next to our working column, we can also double click on a square and Excel will know to drag the formula all the way to the bottom of the previous column's data. So if I go here, back to my cell that I want to copy, I double click on the corner here. You can see that the formula has been picked up and all the coordinates are correct. Great. Let me adjust the column here as well. Terrific. Notice now that all the text in our email addresses are lowercased. Finally, let's look at our province column. In this case, we want the first letter of each word to be capitalized, but the rest of the text to be lowercase. And we can notice instances where that is not the case. To help us fix this, we will use the proper formula. We go to an empty cell, in this case K2, press the equal sign, enter the name of the formula, proper, open the parenthesis, click on the first data point of our original data. In this case, it's found on D2. Close the parenthesis, press enter. Even though we don't have a working column directly next to it, Excel is smart enough to recognize that this is a working set. So if we double click on this, we get all our formulas and the coordinates match up. Great. Adjust the column here. And we notice that all our province columns are now in proper order. Let's verify this by using the unique formula. As you recall, the unique formula returns all the unique values in a dataset or a data series. Do this by pressing equals, unique, opening the parenthesis, going to the first data point, Control-Shift down to get the entire data series, close the parenthesis, press enter. We notice that there are 2 instances of New Brunswick and 2 instances of Nova Scotia. If they were identical, this shouldn't be happening. So what's going on? If you do a little digging, you'll notice that there are trailing spaces in a few New Brunswick instances. For example, here, you can see there's a space here. You can see there's a space here. And you'll also notice there are 2 spaces between this instance of Nova and Scotia. It doesn't seem like much, but Excel doesn't consider these instances as the same as the ones without any extra spaces. So let's fix that so that everything is uniform. To do this, we will use the trim formula, which removes extra spaces. We could create another column of trim values, but let's nest the proper formula inside the trim formula. To do this, let's go back to the first instance of our proper formula right here in K2. Let's go to the formula bar and let's change it a little bit. We keep the equal sign, but before the proper formula, we enter the trim formula, open the parenthesis. You'll notice that the trim formula requires text, and the text will be provided by the proper D2, which will return New Brunswick, and that will get trimmed. So we go to the end of this formula. We have to put another closing parenthesis for the trim formula. We press enter. And now we can double click on this again so that all the instances are trimmed. Now if we look at our unique formula results, it looks much better. Every province has only one unique value. This will make it easier to analyze your data if you wanted to later ask Excel how many instances of New Brunswick show up in this dataset, for example. Before I close out, let's just fill this in. There are no problems with the country column, so let's just put an equal sign, C2, and let's drag this down and adjust the column. There we go. So on the left-hand side, we have our original data, and on the right-hand side, we now have our optimized data that has been cleaned for letter casing and for trailing spaces. Okay, that should be good for now. We've learned how to manipulate strings to create lower cases, upper cases, proper casing, and trimming excess spaces. I hope that this was helpful. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye for now.